Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavors of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction tech or weekly global Passive House showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland, New Zealand.
And I'm Zack Semke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
Great to chat again, Zack. You got another good interview this week.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share this interview with everybody. This is an interview with Amy Failla from Baxt Ingui Architects. And Amy is a principal at Baxt Ingui. Folks probably recognize the name Baxt Ingui because Michael Ingui, the founder of Passive House Accelerator, is the principal there. So Amy has been working there for quite a while, straight out of school, and
yeah, it was quite the story.
Yeah, shares that experience with us and in the interview. And as many people probably are aware, Baxt Ingui is a mover and shaker in the world of passive house retrofits in New York. They're a real pioneer in that space, and Amy has been on the ground making all that happen for quite a while. So she shares about that, shares about the New York Passive House practitioner scene, and it's a fun conversation. So I hope you enjoy.
Before we get into it, I want to mention Engine 16 because it comes up a little bit. And I remember, I think I've seen a couple, or at least one, live event on this project. This project's been going on for a little while now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has been going on for a little while, and it also, it's been navigated the pandemic as well. Engine 16 is a super cool project. It's a retrofit of an historic firehouse in Manhattan. To I think it's either 6 or 7, so I'm forgetting, of multifamily passive house space. It's a Buildings of Excellence Award winner. So it's that's the NYC program that awards these high performance buildings with support to make them come to fruition. And there was a major NYC announcement around Buildings of Excellence that we co-hosted with NYC at Engine 16 several months ago, and it's a very unique project with all sorts of crazy challenges, turning this historic as any retrofit is, but this is it's turning a firehouse into a multifamily building too.
And when you think of when I think of firehouse, I think of quite a large building on sort of the outskirts of the city.
Right. This is
standing by itself.
Yeah. This is like in the middle of Manhattan.
Tiny.
And it's tiny. It's like and it's historic. I mean, it's probably the I don't know what year it was, but 100 years at least. Yeah. Are you looking up? Good.
There's
the power of the internet.
There's an article on Baxt Ingui website, which is quite a good one. I'm looking for the date when it was originally built. In 1974, it was converted into a church. So it had already been in operation for some time before that.
Yeah, at least 100 years old, if not more. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, very, very cool building. And I think one of the videos I remember, one of the lives that I remember seeing more than a year ago, was in the process of gutting it, pulling everything out, and then being faced with all the challenges of making an historic building airtight, and then all these things that you uncover when you start pulling things apart. So yeah, fascinating project, but very, very cool.
Yeah, we've got some great resources that we'll share in show notes so people can see, and and there's some really good video stuff too. So
yeah, awesome. Should we say a quick shout out to our sponsors before we get into the interview?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So a big thank you to all of the sponsors that make everything we do at the Accelerator possible, including the Passive House podcast. So thank you to our founding sponsors: 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stoke Corp, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, Proseco, and Source 2050. And thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
I found it, 1879.
There you go. Nice. Well done. Just in time.
Just in time. All right. Well, enjoy this great interview with Amy from Baxt Ingui.
I have Amy Failla, principal at Baxt Ingui Architects, joining me today for an interview on the Passive House podcast. Amy, welcome to the Passive House podcast.
Thanks, Zach. I'm very honored to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, we are honored as well. I am aware of a lot of your work at Baxt Ingui Architects. Baxt Ingui, for people who may not know, is a powerhouse of passive house design based in New York City. And you do a lot of work around retrofits. And folks may have heard Michael Ingui, the founder of Passive House Accelerator, talk about those retrofits. He's the principal there. And some really cool projects like the Engine 16 project that I know that has been a big piece of your work recently. You are making these projects happen and the design of them happen. And so it's fun to get a chance to learn about that from you. But before we do that, it'd be great to just step back a little bit and hear about a little bit about your journey and how you got into architecture in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, and my parents loved to tell this story that I couldn't stand to stop by other people's houses, like drop off my sister somewhere or whatever. I couldn't stand it without asking to go into the house. I asked everyone if I could see their house, and rudely, would walk into people's houses at the front door and stuff as a little kid. So that was just something I always wanted to see what people's spaces look like. I was always sort of interested in drawing and art and spatial relationships and how people live in different parts of the world. And I was always drawing on my own in grade school, like just sketching and stuff. And then I got into art classes in high school, and I had a really great art teacher who sort of encouraged me to think about architecture. My dad's an engineer, and he kept pushing me to go towards engineering. And I was just like, I don't think I can. It's going to be too math oriented, too boring for me. Architecture seemed like it was going to be the right direction. And this art teacher actually took me on a couple architecture day camps for students. So it was like at an art museum, like they hosted these things for high school students that would build models and do just various architecture school tasks. And it was kind of like it was a very cool thing. And I got out of high school to do it. So I always think back on her and what a great teacher she was. And you have to make your decision if you're going to apply to architecture school, you have to make your decision like early junior year, while everyone else has no idea what they're going to college for. Sometimes you kind of have to just make a decision and run with it. And then
early junior year of high school.
Right.
Because then you need to get your portfolio together and be signing up for a 5-year BArch degree,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of them are like early, need early enrollment type things, or especially if I was trying to get scholarships and things, so I had to do the early enrollment things. So that pushed it even earlier. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I went to the University of Kansas, but it's funny that, living in New York, nobody really asks you where you went to architecture school. I've had very few people kind of ask me, which was so funny thinking back on trying to pick an architecture school, because you think that it's like the most important decision, of your life. But it was, it ultimately was, because my 5th year professor taught my boss, Michael Ingui, in New York, 15 years before.
Oh,
so
wow.
he had left New York and moved to Kansas, started teaching at KU. When I said I was looking to get a job in New York, he said, "You remind me of someone I used to teach who has a firm." And he said, "Come to my office. I'll give you his number." And so I thought I was getting the number from him. Instead, he picked up the phone and called Mike. Didn't tell him I was there. And I was in the office just on speakerphone, awkwardly, part of the conversation, until Professor told, "Oh, by the way, Amy's here. Are you hiring?" So it was super awkward. But I always think back on that professor too, and appreciate that connection. So that's how I got my interview. And I had a few other interviews lined up in New York. Baxt Ingui was my favorite interview, and luckily they offered me the job. So that was in April before I graduated. And then June after I graduated, I moved to New York and started my job like a week later after graduation or whatever. It was like,
that is so cool.
Yeah, I came to New York with like 2 suitcases and just had to find an apartment. Luckily, I have an aunt. Yeah. I had an aunt that used to live in the city, and then she moved to the suburbs, and she, picked me up from the airport. So I had a contact here, which was great, that I could stay with her until I found an apartment. Yeah, it all kind of happened really fast, and then started my job, and I've been there for 15 years.
That's amazing.
So,
that is amazing. Yeah. So something's going right there. Do you like the city? Are you going to be there forever, or what?
Well, yeah, I don't think I'm leaving anytime soon. It's definitely created a home here, and met my husband at Baxt Ingui, who also works there. He grew up on Long Island.
So
now
family roots too now.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we could do architecture in St. Louis or Kansas City. I have a lot of friends still from school that work in Kansas City and Chicago. And there's lots of great firms out there, but I don't know. We wouldn't do the same kind of work that we do here in New York. I don't know. That would be a change to.
Mm-hmm.
I like the historic aspect as well. Like, I like working on old buildings and breathing new life into them. And I know that there's a lot of existing buildings in all of those cities. The Midwest have fun, St. Louis especially. But now I have my network, and it's hard to imagine ever having to start over, I guess.
Well, and you're doing such interesting, and projects are stunning. I think that we'll do absolutely. We'll make sure we link to the Baxt Ingui website so listeners can get a chance to look at these projects. Sometimes I think when people hear retrofit, maybe they don't think about high design, but this is really stunning work. And you get to do projects that have this, that are passive house, and that are, approaching or exceeding net zero energy, and, the climate resilience and all those things. So I can imagine that would be something that you'd want to stick with. I certainly would.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk to my family about it all the time. They're in the lighting business, and so they're very aware of energy savings and need, all the way that the industry needs to adapt. But it's definitely not moving the way it is here in terms of architecture. And I'm hoping that it can continue to catch on. But I do feel like we've been sort of at the forefront of developing passive house in New York City, but I still feel like there's still so much work to do here. There's still so many challenges that we come up against. And so I hope that it, catches on and spreads across the country. The roots are starting to grow here, and it's been an honor to be a part of that process, I guess.
So when you came to Baxt Ingui 15 and a half years ago, Passive House was probably not yet part of the practice, would be my guess. Just when you think about that, would be like 2008, right?
2007.
2007.
Yeah.
So you're right before the crash
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting as well. Passive house, the word passive house was not in our daily vocabulary, but Mike and Ben Baxt, Mike's partner, have always been sustainably minded or aware, I would say. So there were certain things that we always tried to do, in terms of like insulation where we could, and just passive measures, what we call passive measures now, but we didn't call it that back then.
Right.
Was something that Ben has incorporated in the practice, which is now 45 years or more, I think. So the principles were sort of there, the foundation, I guess. But yeah, definitely not the way that it is now. We all took the class as a firm in 2013. And so I would say by 2011, 2012, it was becoming like part of our conversation. And then it took us maybe that long for Mike to kind of get everybody's wheels turning to get that class that we kind of custom tailored to our office. And we even had a few engineers join that class as well. Ed May and John Mitchell taught, and Kramer Silkworth taught the class, and they came to our office and they kind of broke it up in a way that we could handle. It was like 2 days a week, 5 to 7, and it just lasted longer than the CPHD training usually takes. So it took a little longer, but it was something we could all handle and as a firm do together, which was actually really helpful, that we were all doing it together, and then we all got certified. So it was, and then from that point on, it's like we've been sailing, just getting passive house after passive house.
Could you describe some of the projects that you've been working on? I mean, you've done a lot. How many have you been involved with, and what are some examples that give a sense of the breadth of these projects?
So the Engine 16 project is going to be my third certified passive house, but all the other townhouses that I've worked on since 2013 have had passive measures if they weren't certified. One in particular that we really wanted to do a blower door and do some comparison, but it didn't end up working out with the client. But it certainly incorporated the concepts with insulation under the slab and all the, like, not necessarily as intense of an air membrane, but what we could incorporate basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my typical project is I like to have at least one large townhouse project at a time, where it's like a full gut or a full, a larger scale project. And then I usually have like 3 or 4 smaller scaled projects, or sometimes 2 townhouses at a time with 2 smaller projects at a time. Those are sort of like the core. But then you always have these past projects and other sort of side things. So you end up sort of being involved with like 6 or 7 projects at a time. But the core, in the thick of it, projects are typically 4. And I like to vary the scale. So like I said, the Engine 16 project is like it's actually the largest project I've ever worked on. It's like almost a 13,000 square feet building. We added basically 2 floors and a roof bulkhead. So almost sort of like adding like 3 stories in a way, it's just a very complex project, which is fun. It's multifamily, mixed use. And actually we started that in 2017. So I just realized, wow, that we just crossed our 5-year mark on that project. But yeah, and so I have some apartment projects. I have a partial renovation of a townhouse that I actually is a past client. I did the first phase with them 5 years ago. We didn't do the lower level. So we're now doing the lower level and doing an addition and redoing their backyard and totally kind of excavating, changing the whole nature of their rear yard. So it's actually, even though it's a small project, it's actually kind of complex. And then a few apartment projects that are mostly interior type stuff. So yeah, I like the variation. I like to have some projects that are more interior design focused. I like to be involved with the finishes and the interior design when I can. The apartment project I'm referencing right now, the client has a really good eye and kind of acts like an interior designer a little bit. So we work together on that. And that's not very complex because we're not really touching the envelope. It's just, a really, really fun design project. I like having that as an offset sort of to these really complex projects where we're really diving into the envelope and researching products and trying to come up with new solutions. And it's good to have that variation. I think
you're describing a huge range from kind of interior design choices to envelope engineering choices,
yes,
and everything in between. Given whether it's certified or not, the passive house and passive building design work that you've done, what impact has the focus on performance targets and building science, all that, had on your approach to architecture more generally? You've lived and breathed it for a while now.
Yeah. I mean, definitely working with consultants earlier, getting a passive house consultant involved in the schematic design phase or design development phase. And really, it's increased our collaboration, I think. It's forced us to ask a lot more questions and keep reevaluating the decisions and the solutions that we made in the previous project. I would say each project feels almost like a new set of, because it's a new set of problems or a new set of challenges. These buildings are just never the same. Even though they're all masonry, like row houses typically is what we work on, but there's always some different conditions or new challenges that come up. And so trying to tackle those earlier and collaborating with our team, our extended team, not just within the office, but our engineers, passive house consultant, and the installers is a big thing. Of course, we want to involve our consultants early in the schematic and design development process, but if that kind of mentality continues throughout the whole project and through construction, where we're constantly questioning, okay, we specified this product, but is that really the best product? What's available? And especially with the shortages and things like that, that throws another wrench into it. What is the best performance? What has the lowest carbon footprint? And what can we do for the best costs? Is constantly what we're reevaluating. I would say it's increased the level of research that I do for a project too. Even, getting in touch with the manufacturers more, relying on the industry in a way that I didn't before, because the products are constantly changing too. So to understand what the right fit is and then the price and what systems go with other systems, it's all these transitions or places in the project where all the components come together is always a challenge. And that's something I was on the phone dealing with earlier today, just speaking with manufacturers about, does this system go with that system? And so, it's expanded my network for sure. Because we can't find all, even with the internet and how much is on the internet, you still can't answer some of the questions that come up just by looking online. It doesn't exist on, there's always questions and, things that apply directly to our project that we have to dive into. And I do that more and more and more with each project, it seems. And the whole carbon footprint thing is another aspect that we do consider, of course, but we barely scratched the surface with how to evaluate that. But it's going to catch on, and I know we're going to be that's next,
Well, and just the nature of your work with retrofitting buildings. That's the huge piece of embodied carbon in construction is the structure of the building. And you're preserving I know that you are probably augmenting structure in your retrofits, but you're preserving so much of the embodied carbon of the building from by doing a retrofit. When you're able to document that, I think it'll show a really important contribution that you all are making. So it'll be good to see those numbers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess at the bottom of my heart, I feel good about that. But at the same time, it's I know that's not enough. It's like, and
Right. It's
we're,
never enough.
yeah, yeah. And it's, the use of foams, we're really trying to minimize
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's actually one of the interesting challenges I've been working with on Engine 16 lately is doing a mineral wool EFIS system instead of a foam EFIS system. But
Right.
there's not that many certified systems out there yet. So we're kind of working with a manufacturer to go ahead and to apply their system as, we're like the test case on some of these things,
Right.
which is kind of nerve-wracking, I guess.
Yeah, exciting in many ways.
Exciting,
maybe
but
a little
yeah.
too exciting sometimes.
Yeah, but it's funny because it's like the code is changing too for in favor of mineral wool and for fire rating, and so there's multiple factors that
Mm-hmm.
this is going to pick up in New York. But that's another example of one of those research things that we're just like constantly evaluating products. And is this the right system? That's on my mind right at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, as architects, as you as a profession are re-engaging with energy performance, a responsibility for energy performance. Like some of that was kind of given away during the age of modernism and the handing off of responsibility of heating and cooling to mechanical engineers. But as that's been changing in order to create very low energy using buildings, the scope of your work has, like, it's back to, it's not the same as being the old days as master architect, but but it's a similar thing of like you have to like own this really big pool of knowledge and I guess problems and create and find the knowledge and build up the knowledge to be able to address those problems. Like I could see that's hard, but also could be really energizing.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting when the solutions come together and when you kind of click with the right people too. And you mentioned the engineers. I mean, we still come across engineers that don't want to design the project to passive house standards. It's like they don't believe it. And so finding the right people to be on board and work with us and work on these solutions can be a challenge, or just, we've found the right people so far, but now it's like everyone's so busy. We need more. We're like backlogging all of our people. I would say that's like another recent challenge that we really have to like get to the next level of finding more people within our network and getting sort of evolving those relationships, because there's a lot of work going around, which is great. That's always good news, but there's not enough people for the amount of work that we have. And so getting things back is a challenge. And for us too. I mean, it goes both ways with the engineers and the consultants. So just the time that these things take is maybe longer than we'd like. But when it comes together and the relationships click, and then the solutions come together, the drawings go from drawings to being built, and then it finally, whatever the thing is that gets installed, like for example, for the first time we're installing heat pump, domestic hot water heating, electric. And in our previous projects, we were like, well, okay, well, we're happy with the gas high efficiency boilers or hot water heaters, but that's not cutting it anymore. We're trying to go all electric, and with Engine 16 specifically, if we had done gas fired hot water heaters, we would not have hit our passive house mark. So and that was something we learned very early in the schematic design process, working with Ed and John at Building Type, which was very valuable information. So that we worked with the engineer to specify the heat pump hot water heaters. So those just got installed like a few weeks ago, and they're kind of pressure testing and stuff. So the project will be under construction still for a while, but it's still exciting to see it going in and seeing these things come together that we haven't done before.
So one of the things that we get to do is work with you as the host of this series, the Urban Passive House series that we're doing in conjunction with New York Passive House. And
Yes.
and you are a board member of New York Passive House. So could you
Yep.
talk a little bit about your work there and why you got involved with New York Passive House?
I got involved just to kind of expand my network, I guess, and meet other architects and people in the industry that are kind of dealing with the same set of challenges, but in different ways. So it's been great to get to know them over the years. And as a group, we try to just expand the knowledge base and do some educational events and support the Passive House community and help push the message forward. And now, like, it's funny. I feel like I know them really, really pretty well. Whereas, in the beginning, it was like trying to figure out who was who and what kind of work they did. And now I have them in my network that I can call them up and say, hey, how did you deal with this problem? And get to hear different perspectives.
You got some compatriots there.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate your time, Amy, and sharing your experience and your perspectives here. Is there anything else you want to add, or I don't know, if something on the horizon you want to share or anything before we close up?
As far as what's on the horizon, it's funny. It's like the Engine 16 project is like so much of my bandwidth right now that I haven't, looked towards the next Passive House yet because I'm still in the thick of it. So, but I would say like day to day, I'm always trying to figure out how to do this job more efficiently, more effectively, and yet still remember to have fun and to have a sense of humor. And because that can be easy to forget, at least for me especially. I tend to get very intensely involved in some of the issues, and sometimes I have to step back and be like, no, just breathe and see the silver lining or see the humor sometimes in the situations, to always still be kind to people but also somehow be direct at the same time about what either I need or what the project needs. That's another challenge that it's like day to day I'm trying to figure out how to do that better. So those are I would say that's in a closer view, that's like something that's, I'm always trying to figure out how to do the job better, basically. Ask the right questions and challenge the people around me, and also give them energy and get energy back from others, which is why I like to work in person mostly, and why our office tends to focus on working in the office. We can work remotely, but it's encouraged to be in person, and because personally I feed off of that energy. That's kind of that's on my plate right now, I guess, and near future.
Well, the work that you're doing is really important, and so good luck with continuing to like dial it in. I think a lot of us can relate to that message.
Yeah. Communicating and being faster with communicating. I know, like, the New York vibe is like, come on, let's do this quickly. But then there are other times when I'm like, this just isn't moving fast enough. Why is this still
a New Yorker?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like, but then at the same time, you never want to sacrifice quality, for speed. So finding that right balance is always tough too. So, I mean, we are in the service business. So ultimately it's our client, that we really rely on or are answering to, or sort of showing up for, I guess. Like, that's something that, I didn't mention before, but it's like at the end of the day, we do our best as architects because the clients don't necessarily know all of the right things to do or the questions. But at the end of the day, you still work for a client. So you have to find the right answer for them and for what fits their lives or what their needs and cost and all of those things. Like that never goes away. So, and that's what keeps clients coming back, and how we get new clients, because the old clients will tell the new clients that we think about them first. And that's how we have to, again, finding that balance of showing up every day for the client, but also doing the right thing as an architect and figuring out where you can make those better performing, lower carbon choices, but still work it in to the client's needs and budget, all those things. That's another kind of constant challenge, but yeah, we get through it. It's fun.
That's the work. Well,
Yeah.
Amy, thanks again. This has been really wonderful.
Yeah,
And,
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to tour Engine 16 once it's completed. It's such an exciting project.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we should do a tour soon, actually, while it's still under construction too.
Definitely.
So yeah, thanks for having me.
Amy Failla there of Baxt Ingui. I really love that chat, and I think that's we've had a couple of interviews now from people who I'm kind of jealous of because they seem to have known from a very young age what they wanted to be when they grow up.
I knew you were going to say that. I am jealous of that too. I had the exact same thought. It's like
it's because we're both struggling with it still.
Yeah, maybe so. Lauren Thompson and Amy Failla both knew that they were going to be architects when they were like 7.
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
And shout out to awesome early childhood teachers.
Yeah.
Awesome teachers who inspire people and literally change people's lives.
Yeah, no, it's true.
They're very, very cool, and I could totally see Amy just checking out houses and enjoying that artistic side, and that thread comes throughout the interview. She mentions the word fun a few times, and I got a sense of her being balanced in her work. She talked about the amount of work that they typically have going on at a certain time, the number of projects that's sort of manageable for them, and I think that speaks to someone who sort of found their groove a little bit in what they can manage well and do all of the critical analysis and the serious part of being an architect, but also have some space for enjoying the process.
Indeed. Yeah. And I have to say the folks at Baxt Ingui know how to have fun too. I've been out with those folks, and Amy is definitely a ringleader with them, and they're a fun group. But yeah, I felt like, I mean, not to, that was actually another parallel. I think since we just had the interview with Lauren Thompson that I thought was notable was you had 2 very accomplished practitioners who, when they were reflecting on Passive House and its impact on their practice, were really emphasizing that the fun of navigating all these different kind of imperatives that Passive House brings, as well as the design, and then like how that impacts the way that you're interacting with your team and thinking, and really, like Amy was, I think, really thoughtful about just and reflective, I think, about how she's really working to be continually improve as a person who can bring people together and inspire them, or just work in common cause to this end goal for these really complex projects. It's good stuff.
And we hear that often about the importance of talking to people early on in a project, and having project kickoff meetings and the integrative design process. Doing that in practice can be something else from the theory, but she really talked about how important that is to get people involved and to coordinate them, get them aligned early on in the project to ensure a more successful process. Something else that was a bit more subtle, but I think it's really important to bring up when I hear it, is the length of time she mentioned, you asked about how when she first joined, if Baxt Ingui was doing passive house at the time, and it's very easy to look back at history of a practice like that and say, there's sort of this 3, 4, 5 year period where they started learning about it and dabbling with it. In the moment, that can feel like quite a long time of taking people to go from what they were previously considering as being, sustainable design or energy efficient design to then being almost exclusively passive house. And we sometimes get frustrated when other people don't move as fast as we want them to, but forget that it may have taken us quite some time. I mean, I certainly remember the first time hearing about passive house and being less than enthusiastic about it and a little bit skeptical, but it really taking me 3 or 4 years to really embrace it. So I think it's a valuable lesson in retrospect of just how long it might take people to go from first hearing about passive house to being fully into it.
Yeah. Right. Well, in particularly when you're one of the first movers,
Yeah.
Which was definitely the case.
Other people around you are skeptical. And the other thing, I think you raised a really good point about, which we've also talked about before, is the traditional idea of a master architect, and that very, I guess, quite classic perspective of the overarching leader of a project and all of the things that they were responsible for, and that sort of evolution of bringing energy efficiency, sustainability, and now carbon into that role amongst all the other things.
It's a lot to hold, I know, for practitioners. So it's really great that we've got some powerful tools. I think that's what's so compelling about passive house and also, like on passive house around operational carbon. There are also some really important tools that are becoming more mature around embodied carbon as well. So it's becoming more doable to do a life cycle analysis of the carbon implications of a project than it was, just a few years ago.
Powerful tools, but also powerful connections, and the understanding that you can be a coordinator of a project like that and bring in experts, and your role becomes more of a coordinator of all those experts rather than the fount of all knowledge yourself. Yeah,
no, good point. And I think that's actually plays a really important way that Baxt Ingui, the firm, is a leader in the space, is that they've been a convener from day one of builders and tradespeople to facilitate learning from one another on taking the lessons learned from every project. I mean, it's really basically that kind of that ultimately the inspiration I think that Michael had. He took that experience and his kind of instincts around building that community of practice at Baxt Ingui and transformed it into the vision for the accelerator. It's basically the same purpose.
Yeah.
So that is it's right, setting the table, and you're not the big expert. You're bringing together all of the smart people who are involved in the project, from the air tightness detailing to the design of the whole project.
So it's a little bit of a plug for one of our supporters now, but listening to Amy speak about that journey, it also makes Source 2050 be the logical next step. When she was talking about the challenge now of looking at sourcing all the products, materials, and having to investigate all the details, and that has become so much more complex now because there's a lot more involved. The systems are more complicated, but also the information is presented in a different way. You kind of have to go looking for things, and that's a lot of what Michael, the inspiration is behind Source 2050, is to make that challenge of finding products and materials easier to accomplish for a passive house.
Yeah, he's great. He's addressing pain points that he's experiencing himself with these
he's
ventures.
his own problems.
It's good stuff.
Awesome. Well, great stuff. Exciting stuff. And as we mentioned at the top, check out all of if you just look up Engine 16 on the Passive House Accelerator, you'll be able to find some great images and some videos too of that amazing project, and also some of the other projects that Baxt Ingui and Amy are working on. All right, I think that just about does it for us this week.
I think it does. Yeah, we'll throw a link into show notes for upcoming events, and yeah, thanks, Matthew.
Yep. Stay tuned. Check out the accelerator. If you haven't already, do sign up for the newsletter. That's the best way to stay in touch with things that are coming up and what's going on in Passive House world, and particularly around the accelerator. All the best. Thank you for listening in, and we'll be back again next week on Passive House Podcast.